Every franchise has a beginning, and Utah's start now. A new city, new colors, same NHL grind. This is the Utah Mammoth. Up front, this team is driven by skill and speed. Clayton Keller, the face of the franchise, Nick Schmaltz, the playmaker, and Dylan Gunther, the next star ready to break out. With support from Lawson Krause's power, and a deep forward group led by Barrett Hayden and Alex Kerfoot. On defense, strength meets experience. Mikhail Sergachev anchoring the blue line, and in net for us, Karl Vejmelka, the backbone and the difference maker. No history to protect and no expectations to hide behind. This isn't just year one, it's the beginning of a stampede. Welcome to NHL 26 and our Utah Mammoth franchise. Our first game of the season was on the road in Denver, taking on the Colorado Avalanche. Colorado would start out hot as Valeri Nichushkin would almost put this in the net to start, and within the first 10 minutes of this period, Colorado was keeping the heat on us. Finally, this pressure would pay off as Gabriel Landeskog would find the back of the net off the ricochet for the Avalanche. And that would put them up 1-0 with just over 3 minutes to go and would tack on another one, this time from Valeri Nichushkin. And so we were headed into the second period to start the season down 2-0. That would quickly change though, as Nick Schmaltz had this on the breakaway and he would find the back of the net for us, netting our first goal of the season. And hopefully there's many more to come just like that, but we wouldn't find any the rest of the second period. Into the third, and we needed to keep standing strong on defense as Nathan MacKinnon would almost find the goal here. But some strong play from Vitek Vanecek tonight was still keeping us in this one, but our time was running short. Less than a minute to go now. I don't know how many more opportunities we're going to have to try to tie this game up at 2, as this most likely is going to be our last chance. Nick Schultz, that's no good, and Dylan Gunther barely misses the back of the net there. And unfortunately, that would be all she wrote, as we're going to lose our opening game of the season to the Avalanche 2-1. Nick Schmaltz had our only goal of this game and led the team with 3 shots. But we're not going to win many games this season if we're not even putting up 25 shots on goal. Thankfully, we would turn around and pick up our first victory of the season the very next game against the Nashville Predators. And with that victory, we would jump to the end of the first month, where we were currently sitting at 5-5-1 in 5th place in the Central Division. Clayton Keller was leading the way for us with points at 9 on the season, and Lawson Krause was topping our team's stat line with 4 goals. Let's see if we can turn things around in the second month of play and get ourselves above 500, starting with a match at home against the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Lightning were going to be a tough matchup coming into this one, as they were sitting at 8-3 early on in the season. It was a stalemate throughout the first, as we both got about equally the same amount of shots off on net, but nothing had been able to fall for either team yet until Lawson Krause would find his 5th goal of the season to put us up 1-0. That would be all she wrote for the first period, as we would head into the second with a 1-0 lead over the Lightning. And Tampa Bay was getting some very good offensive looks so far in this one, but they just couldn't find anything to stick. With less than 30 seconds to go here in the second period, this would be their last attempt, as it almost finds its way in the goal. But Vitek Vanecek has been playing a fantastic game tonight for us against the Lightning, and I'm really happy with how we've looked. This is a type of play we were going to have to keep up all season if we wanted to meet our GM's expectations of making the playoffs this year, and hopefully this game is going to give us a bit of a confidence boost as Clayton Keller puts it away on the empty net. And we're going to start the month of November here at home, taking down one of the top teams in the NHL. Jumping ahead to the end of the month, that good play seemed to continue for us, as we were now 2 games above 500, and it was some familiar names at the top of the leaderboard for points and goals for us on the stat line. This month we also received our first scouting call, which said this was going to be a strong rookie class. The 2 focuses I wanted to hone in on the draft this year was going to be depth on our wing, as well as trying to bolster our defensive lines, which were rated an E. We also were going to be losing a major offensive piece this next season as well, as Nick Schmaltz did not want to extend his expiring contract with us, but we would extend Scott Peronovich, Juuso Valimaki, and Michael Carcone. With roster extensions taken care of, it was time to jump into December, where we would start the month on the road with a grudge match against the San Jose Sharks. We would get this game started early against the Sharks, as Nick Schmaltz would find the goal for us first tonight. And theoretically, with as well as this team has been playing, this should be an easy win against the Sharks tonight. With under 5 seconds to go, San Jose would get one last shot on goal here, and that was a weak one, as we'd head to the second with the lead, but Karl Vejmelka would lose the puck, and and Tyler Toffoli would put it in as a result, tying this game up at 1 apiece in the second period, and it seemed as though the momentum has shifted to San Jose. We needed something to swing the momentum back our way, and that would happen here with just over 5 minutes to go as Scott Perunovich would find his first goal of the season. You love to see it, the defenseman who just signed a 3-year extension with us a few weeks ago, giving us the lead, as now all we would have to do at the start of the third period is just hold on to this for the final 10 minutes. We had done that so far, but it was an empty net for San Jose, so Alex Kerfoot could put this away for good for us. And as expected, this grudge match was an easy 3-1 victory for the Mammoth here on the road. Halfway through December, we finally got our first look at this year's draft class as well. Nasir Esposito was the consensus #1 overall pick this year, and a gem and Ethan Belkitz was climbing up teams' draft boards. We had 10 picks in this year's upcoming draft, and we're currently slotted around pick 20 to 23, with our current projected first-round pick being center Brooks Rogowski, who could potentially be a future replacement for Nick Schmaltz. We'll take a closer look, though, at scouting later in the season, as we might not even be picking that high if we continue playing the way we are headed into January. The Mammoth were starting the new year on the road, taking on the New York Islanders, and they were going to have to start stacking up some wins here in the new year if they wanted to make a late season push for the playoffs. Nothing much had happened in the first period, but in the second, Bo Horvat would get this to slip on into the goal. A very lucky shot from him that just finds its way trickling into the back. And now Utah would be trying to respond in the second, but nothing would be happening for them. Jumping into the third now, still 1-0 for the Islanders, and they were keeping the pressure on Utah. And time was running slim here for the Mammoth as under 2 minutes to go, and they couldn't find a goal on this possession. And with 15 seconds left, it would be Bo Horvat putting this game away for good for the Islanders, as they bring in the new year at home with a win, sending Utah back home packing. We would get another draft class update for the new year, where now we were projected to pick between picks 11 and 13. Defenseman Ryan Lynn was our projected pick, who we would get added to our draft board, as unfortunately this higher projected draft position was due to a drop in our play, as we were now 6th in our division at 26, 27, and 3, and on the outside looking in at the playoffs. It was the last game for the Mammoth at home before the Olympic break, and this team wanted to end on a good note before the break, as they desperately needed to do so. The playoffs were still a faint possibility for this team in their second season, but we're going to need an unlikely run and a long slew of wins to close out the season to make that happen. Both the fans and the team are hoping this break is what they need to turn things around, and this is going to be the type of play we need to see from this team coming out of the break if they want to go on a playoff push. Dylan Gunther would score his second goal of the game to put the Mammoth up 2-0, followed up with a goal from Logan Cooley, and then for the very first time this season, we are going to see a hat trick as Dylan Gunther puts it in the back of the net. That would send us to the fourth period with less than 10 minutes remaining, up 4-0 over Detroit, and it would stay there as we pick up the shutout and head into the Olympic break with a win. A fantastic game from Dylan Gunther today, as this was the first hat trick we have seen all season from one of our players. Headed into the Olympic break, Clayton Keller was our team leader in goals and points, but we were still 6 points out of a wild card spot. The Panthers led the Atlantic, the Hurricanes led the Metropolitan, and the Oilers led the Pacific, while we were sitting in 11th place of the Western Conference. Our first game back from break would be a loss to the Avalanche, and then a shootout loss to Minnesota. Clearly, not much changed for this team over the break, as we had even further to climb this last month-and-a-half stretch of the season. 1.5 months left in the season for the Mammoth, and it kicks off with a game against the Blackhawks. If we wanted any shot at making the playoffs, we couldn't lose many more games in this stretch, but even if we did win as many as we needed, it was still going to be a stretch for us to make the playoffs as a wild card. The only thing we could do was start this game off with a win, and we were off to a great start thanks to Brandon Tenev, and that would wrap things up in the first period as we would hold on to a 1-0 lead over the Blackhawks. Chicago definitely seemed to step up their defense here in the second period as we weren't getting as many of looks, but that would finally change for us as it was going to be Clayton Keller getting after this slow puck, putting it in the back of the net for us to go up 2-0, and then right after it was Logan Cooley. Not even 30 seconds later with that goal, as this is the type of intensity we need every game to make the playoffs. Right as I say that, the intensity continues as Kevin Stenlund finds the back of the net for us, and our playoff hopeful push starts off great with a 4-0 win here at home over the Blackhawks. That win got us back to a .500 record, and a follow-up win puts us over the hump, and this was a very promising start to the month of March for this team. Unfortunately, the win streak would end there for us, but we had made up some ground and were only 4 points out from the wild card. We would go ahead and sim to the end of March now, but before that, it was time for a scouting update. Our current top prospect on our board was defenseman Ryan Lynn, but he was not fully scouted just yet, and we did not know his NHL ETA. Lynn was who we wanted with our first pick, but other players we were looking at included Adam Novotny and Taro Filstrom, who would be my second pick if Lynn was still not on the board at our pick. We also had a projected early second round pick from the Rangers this year, and with this pick from New York, we had eyes on the young wing Alex McLean. Two other prospects that really intrigued me for potential late second round or early third round picks were Ilya Zaitsev and Alexei Morozov. That brings us back to simming to the end of March. We had dropped one game, but only being 5 points back headed into the final month still gave us a small chance at the playoffs. A loss to start against Seattle was not what we needed, but wins against Vancouver, a Stanley Cup favorite Edmonton, and Nashville would help, but that run would come to an end against Carolina. Despite that small 3-game win streak, we had dropped another point in the standings to 6 back, and with only 3 games remaining, our season was over, but would at least close it out with a win over St. Louis. No surprise that Clayton Keller ended up leading our team in points, assists, and goals this season, and I'm very excited about what the future is going to bring for us with Logan Cooley with how well he played this season. I did not like to see one of our top defenders though with a negative 10 plus minus line, as next year I would like to see more of our defensemen looking like Nate Schmidt did for us on ice. The Colorado Avalanche would lock up the 1 seed in the Western Conference, and the Florida Panthers would lock up the 1 seed in the East. Here was a look at your Season 1 Stanley Cup playoffs, as it was going to be the Avalanche and Lightning in the finals, and to wrap up Season 1, your Stanley Cup champions would be the Colorado Avalanche. It was now time for our first ever offseason with the Mammoth. Kevin Connaughton would be our only player retiring, and after the draft lottery, we would be picking 13th overall. Speaking of which, it was time for our first ever NHL entry draft, and I thought I would just try to see if we could land the #1 overall pick from San Jose, but obviously they were not going to give that up, and to nobody's surprise, they would take Nick Esposito with the first overall pick. By the time we got to pick 13, our top choice in defender Ryan Lynn was not on the board anymore, so we would go with Jani Haikila, an 18-year-old 66 overall wing with our first round pick. We also had the second pick in the second round from the New York Rangers and would take Xavier Villanueva, a 69 overall defenseman. We had 2 more picks in the second round this draft, and our next selection would be JP Hilpert, a 64 overall center, and our last second round pick, we would go back to the wing position, selecting a 66 overall Dean Legwand. In the third round, we would pick up 66 overall defenseman Riley Battaglia, and would follow that up with another defenseman in 62 overall Matthias Josephson. Our fourth round pick would be Miroslav Sadin, and round 5 would be another defenseman, Christian Moden. A bit of a stretch in round 6 with goalie Yuri Volkov, but our scouts did have him noted as a gem prospect, and would finish up the draft with selecting left wing Asher Leach with our 7th round pick. Now it was time to go through and re-sign more extending contracts. Nick Schmaltz originally said he didn't want to re-sign with us, but I was going to throw an offer his way anyway, and Barrett Hayden was another big name in this team that we needed to make sure we re-signed. Kevin Stenlund would get a 2-year extension offer from us, and he would happily accept right away. And after that, both Nick Schmaltz and Barrett Hayden agreed to their contract extensions as well. It was time to hit NHL free agency, and our first offer would be to the wing Kiefer Sherwood, but he was going to turn down our offer and would sign with Pittsburgh. A little bit on the older side, but we would offer a 1-year contract to Gustav Nyquist, and he would happily accept and join join our team. With less than $4 million remaining in cap space, we would go after center Alexander Wennberger, and he would be our only other signing in this free agency period. Both Wennberger and Nyquist would add depth to that third line that we wanted to bolster this offseason, but we still needed some help on the defensive side of the puck, and if we were making another playoff push this year, we might be buyers at the trade deadline to fix that. So that is going to wrap up this very first season with the Utah Mammoth. Hopefully next year we finally make the playoffs for the first time. Let me know any roster moves you want to see, and I will see you guys in season number 2.